You are not required to set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Today, we're talking about boundaries on this episode of Joker to King podcast. What's good, Joker to King community? Welcome to another episode of the Joker to King podcast. It is a beautiful day here in Southern California. We are approaching Memorial Day weekend, and I like to get these podcasts out immediately. So if you're listening to this right now, that means it is being recorded Memorial Day weekend. Fantastic holiday weekend to kick off of the summer. And we're also wrapping up Mental Health Awareness Month. And the way I wanted to wrap up Mental Health Awareness Month is by talking about one of the most important parts of protecting your mental health, and that is establishing boundaries. Now, whatever you already know about boundaries, I'm going to add a little bit of a twist to it to make sure that you really understand what boundaries, what they mean and how they operate in relationships. Because a lot of times when we think about setting boundaries, what we're doing is really setting standards, which is a little bit different. So stay with me here. This is going to be a short episode, but powerful. I like to keep them short and sweet. So pay very close attention because I want to make sure that you really get this lesson here. Now, the thing about boundaries is they help protect you. The idea is not to set boundaries in order to manipulate somebody else's behavior. The idea that's a secondary benefit or a secondary impact, but really it's about you. The boundaries are about you. In fact, there are about 4 or 5 benefits for setting clear boundaries. The number one benefit is for your own personal growth. You grow as a mature adult, a mature human being by knowing what it is that is going to take care of you. And the boundaries are like a fence. I don't want to use the word wall, but what you have here is something that keeps you safe within that boundary. Okay. The other benefit for setting clear boundaries is it reduces stress. There's less stress on you. You set clear limits on your time. You set clear limits on your energy. You set clear limits on what you commit to. You set clear limits on your resources. You set clear limits on how much effort you put towards something. And all of these limits actually help you reduce stress. Okay. One of the other benefits is it helps to reduce resentment. When people are aware of your boundaries and they maintain space outside of that boundary and don't violate that standard that you set, what happens is there's no need to harbor resentment because people are doing what it is that they need to do in order to protect themselves and to protect you. And it's a win-win situation. Resentment gets reduced. And the final benefit, it helps you with the number one Joker to King principle, which is you build integrity by under promising and over delivering. You build integrity, under promise, over deliver. When I know what my boundaries are and I know what I am going to do and what I'm not going to do, it helps me to not go past my own boundary. I don't go past my own limit. I under promise. If I say that I can be there at 3:00, it's because I know that I could really be there at 2:30. I under promise and I over deliver. Okay. And that's what boundary setting helps you to do. Now, how do you do this boundary setting? That's the key. It's easy to do. I mean, it's easy to say, but sometimes it's hard to actually manifest, especially if you haven't practiced it in a while. Now, some of the ingredients for establishing boundaries is self-awareness. That's number one. You cannot establish a boundary if you do not know yourself. You have to know what it is that you're willing to put up with, what you're willing to tolerate when it comes to communication. You need to know what your resources are, your time, your energy, your willingness. If you know yourself well, you can then do step two, which is communicate those things to other people. So self awareness and effective communication. And then there's this last piece, which is self assuredness, self assertiveness, self confidence, right? That last piece, getting out of your own head and worrying about whether or not you're going to harm another person's feelings, and making sure that you communicate yourself with confidence clearly so that there is no confusion about that boundary. Okay. When you fail to establish clear boundaries, what you're doing is you're allowing your stress levels to increase. You're allowing yourself to set yourself on fire in order to keep somebody else warm. And that is not going to happen with you, my Joker the King friend. It is not going to happen with you. My job is to make sure you become healthy, mature, and grow and evolve in your adulthood, right? Now, one last thing. I told you I was going to put a little bit of a spin on boundary setting because I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about boundaries. Um, when you draw a line, that technically is not establishing a boundary in a relationship. When you tell someone you are no longer allowed to yell at me, that's not actually establishing a boundary, that's setting a standard. Okay. I want you to think about it differently. Establishing the boundary is the action that you take when the violation happens. Let me say that again. I want to make sure I say this clearly here. Setting that line, that's called setting the standard. That's called standard setting, right? When somebody crosses that line, the action you take next, that's establishing the boundary. The second part, the action that you take. Let me give you an example. Let's suppose that, you know what? I'll give you a real life example. A family member who loves to scream and yell and all that kind of thing. I decided, you know what? Not going to happen. You want to talk with me? You don't get to call me names and you don't get to yell. Period. End of discussion. That's me setting the standard. Now, what's going to happen is the next time that person sees me, they're going to be tempted to yell, scream, curse at me, all that kind of stuff. I already set the standard. When that person crosses the line, what do I do next? That's most important. I got up, walked out. Didn't have to say bye. Didn't have to repeat the standard. Didn't have to do any of that stuff. I just got up and walked out. My getting up and walking out is me establishing the boundary. It's something that I do for myself. They can yell and scream all they want. I'm just not going to be in the room. See, I'm not trying to control another person. I'm trying to protect myself, which is different. It's a different mindset. Okay. So when somebody does that violation of that standard, I take action. I remove myself. I don't have to repeat myself again. I don't have to do it. I just get up. Boop. They will eventually learn or they will eventually move on. Because my job is not to control someone else. My job is to control me. Okay. I hope that was clear. All you have to do this week is practice self awareness, get clear on what it is that you are going to tolerate and what you're not going to tolerate. Ask yourself some of these questions. When it comes to communication, what are your limits concerning the way people are allowed to speak to you? Can they yell at you? Can they curse at you? Can they call you names? Can they lay hands on you? What are the limits that you are going to set when it comes to communication? What about when it comes to your time? Are people allowed to call you after 11 o'clock at night? Are people allowed to show up unannounced on your doorstep at your house? Uh, when people ask you for a favor, what limits do you set on your time? What limits do you set on your effort? Okay. You need to know yourself. Relationship is built on communication. So once you know yourself, communicate it clearly to other people as the need arises, and then you can practice establishing your boundaries. All right, party people. That's it for today's episode of Joker the King podcast. Remember to go to jokertheking.com, click on that advice link, leave me a question, and I will respond directly to you. You all have a great week. Take care of yourself. And while you're at it, take care of someone else. Peace.